Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing Diablo IV coverage, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of the Tree of Whispers.
I feel like this is volume 85 of our Diablo IV coverage. We've done so many, and all of them have been, I've enjoyed it all. We did act by act of the full campaign for Diablo IV. We did a full retrospective of Diablo 3. Diablo. You know, it's the cousin game. We also have done every season so far, and of course the recent expansion, Vessel of Hatred. It's been a perpetually ongoing series. It's been a lot of fun.
Somehow this is already season 7. So we're talking about Season of Witchcraft today, and we're bringing our usual kind of casual perspective to the discussion.
Committed casual, I think, is what we're calling it.
Committed casual. Yes, I forgot what the exact term was.
It always reminds me of fast casual, which is a restaurant term.
Committed casual means we're there day one, but we take weeks to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so just to paint the picture, Season of Witchcraft. We have a structure to these kind of episodes to just signpost that at the beginning here. We're going to do a state of the game. We're going to talk about the seasonal campaign. We'll do our traditional class update. And then, as ever, we have a couple wrap-up questions to get to.
Sounds fun.
I have my own sort of preamble going into this discussion because I've been cheating on Diablo IV. As you can see in our episode from a few weeks ago, I was a little worried about coming back to Diablo IV. I mean, also because we were sort of underwhelmed by the last season, and it felt like we wrapped it up in 2 days, and then there was just this gulf of months and months without any new Diablo. And in that time, I fell in love with Path of Exile 2.
Of course, yes. Which seems like a better version of Diablo 4, or maybe what Diablo 4 wanted to be.
And that is what I was expecting. That's the posture I had coming back to this season. I was worried that my taste in ARPGs had changed. And I'm so happy that that wasn't true.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Path of Exile 2 is a near-perfect game. But it is also a markedly different experience than Diablo. And I think this version of Diablo 4 that we're going to talk about today, in this moment, these are always time capsule episodes because it's a live, evolving, living, breathing game. This version of Diablo right now, this loud, colorful, almost campy loot fountain of a game is a hoot.
It is a real hoot. That's a great way to describe it. I like that.
I feel like they've almost uniquely focused the game around fun factor, which was always that X factor, that element that you and I were championing.
Right.
And trying to see in the cracks and the shadows. When the game launched, there wasn't that much of that. And I feel like they've grown into that constantly. We're going to talk about the sort of loot piñata of this season with legendaries and uniques everywhere. But it almost feels like how jubilant and excited Season 4 was.
Sure,
with the Season of Loot Reborn. Because it's not just that fun factor is there in every activity and every quest, every objective. It's that there's increasingly little friction in the game keeping you from having fun.
That's true.
I feel like the quality of life improvements under the hood, I mean, it's steady. It's every couple months, a bunch of things are streamlined. Your inventory doesn't get full. You now have like a stash tab, basically, for socketables.
Right,
for everything. For the runes that you want to put in your gear.
I forgot that gems used to take up space in your inventory.
Like individually.
That was so dumb.
Yes.
Yeah. Lots of improvements have been made. I know, I think about it, I'm like, the Diablo 4 at launch was a totally different game than where we are now.
Yes.
And I think for the better. So I'm happy about that.
And if you just want to jump in for a couple days, that's totally fine and you'll have a great time. But I think they've really split the difference here in giving you optional depth. Because there really is always something to do. I say this as a refugee from Destiny 2, where if you just wanted PvE content where it wasn't fighting against other people, it was fighting against aliens in the computer and story content, you ran out of that pretty quick. I always found I was always scraping the bottom of the barrel.
So it was like pushing you to PvP stuff.
The grind wasn't interesting, and even if I wanted to, there wasn't that much of it. Like the base Diablo 4 is 120 dungeons. It has a whole campaign that they don't delete like Destiny did.
Crazy that they did that.
There's always a seasonal campaign here with a story and some fun new activities. And even past that, there are multiple different grinds or flavors or avenues. Hey, I'm going to get really into Nightmare Dungeons. I'm going to get really into Helltides. I'm going to clear out those 120 dungeons. I'm going to go find all the altars of Lilith. There's always more to do here.
Sure.
And for the kind of players we are, which is more story-focused, I guess, I never find myself hitting the bottom.
Sure.
I'm never hitting the bottom of the barrel here. So I'm happy to report that despite my torrid love affair with Path of Exile 2, I absolutely caught the Diablo bug again.
I'm
Even
happy to
after
hear that.
you and I finished the season. I was blowing through extra hell tides just because I was
you
having
were.
fun.
Yeah, watching, I was like, oh, you're still playing. That's really great.
But it's such a testament to the game because this is the moment I least expected to want to play more Diablo.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. So I wonder how it would have felt if you like had been in a action fantasy ARPG like drought, like you hadn't been playing anything, how this would have felt then compared to having gotten to play it so much and so well with PoE2.
Because I should be burned out. I mean, if you didn't see our Path of Exile 2 early access impressions episode, go check that out. That was a lot of fun.
It was
also,
fun.
I put a lot of work into the gameplay that's running in the YouTube version because I
You played all 6 classes, folks. All 6.
Exactly. I did Act 1 6 times. That's a lot of energy. It's a lot of thinking. But yeah, the experience we had, kind of to circle back to the state of the game right now in Season 7 of Diablo 4, you and I had a week of playing this season.
Yeah.
Which is much longer than we usually have. But it was a week of comfort food and leveling and that constant pop of someone leveling up. And we were slightly off kilter in our characters.
Yes.
So
we'll explain that later. But yeah.
Yeah, we weren't always leveling up at the same time, which just means someone was always leveling up.
It's true.
Dopamine and excitement and new skills and new gear and new levels. Occasionally there would be some grind, but my big memory of this season is just the whole screen being full of legendaries. That piñata gameplay, no stress at all, barely any strategy as compared to Path of Exile.
I mean, none. None to speak of.
And the silly new witchcraft powers they gave you, these kind of horror-tinged companions, they were a lot of fun. I got a big poison frog. When I was a kid,
did like the frog.
I really liked poison dart frogs.
That's
I
true,
liked
you
the
did.
Rainforest Cafe. I had books about frogs.
I told you about the time that I pretended to have pet frogs at home so I would seem cool. I did that as a kid. So we have tropical frogs in common.
That's quite a vignette. Yeah. But it's also the look of this season. We've talked about how kind of drab the realism of Diablo 4 has gotten at different moments in this journey.
True, yes.
This season was full Diablo 3. This was a purple-ass season.
It's true.
The state of the game right now is fun.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a really good way to put it. I had, I think, a little less fun with this season than you did, but I don't think it's anything to do with the mechanics or systems of the game or like options, things you can interact with. I think I just didn't like the structure of the season itself.
Yes.
But we can get into that maybe later.
Right now. That's perfect.
Let's
That's
do
a
it.
perfect
Let's do it
transition.
right now. So, okay, why don't you lay out what the story of the campaign is?
I'll lay it out, and then I know exactly where to hand it off to you here.
Okay, great.
So the seasonal campaign for Season 7, Season of Witchcraft of Diablo 4.
Cool theme, by the way. I was so excited for this.
Yes, me too. Even that trailer, the way they post the infographics now with all the new marquee changes for the season, they're as good at updating the game as they are at communication.
Sure.
And those are two planks that most live service games completely fall apart on.
That's true.
So total kudos to the team. But I love that this campaign was all about the Tree of Whispers.
Yeah.
The story, the extra audio, the dialogue they recorded for this season was them reinvesting in existing characters and locations. That's always what I'm asking for from a location. Let me go back to the Slaughtered Calf Inn.
Right.
Let me care about these characters and places that I did get invested into during the campaign. It doesn't always need to be a new section of the map.
Sure,
Nahantu was cool during
Right.
Vessel of Hatred.
And it makes sense as an expansion, so you add a new place, But for this, I mean, the Tree of Whispers is really cool, and I've
Yes.
always liked it since it was introduced in the original campaign. So, like, I didn't mind that connection there. I thought that was fun.
And because the Tree of Whispers has all of these heads dangling from it, and we have this witchcraft purple horror theme to this season, there was this great conceit of the Headless. There was all this headless rot and all these fun names for the new enemies, the new currencies, and then the kind of general sketch of the campaign was tracing the lore of all these missing heads. And
Right.
this is where we have to take a brief aside to talk about innuendo.
Oh, okay. What do you mean?
The number of times... You know what I mean.
I forgot. We figured this out day one, and I forgot all about it. Go ahead.
Oh, no.
No,
the
I
amount
forgot.
of this season that was just about the headless.
Sure.
And chasing the heads. And
Yeah. Getting head.
know,
it was all
it was
about
baked
getting.
into
We were
the-
trying
yes.
to get head.
It
That was
it
the whole conceit of the season.
But it wasn't incidental.
Yeah,
it was
sure.
it felt by the end incredibly tongue-in-cheek in a way that I found very charming.
Yeah, I mean, the game's goofy. It's fun. And it was never like overdone. It was just
it
like,
wasn't parody.
we're seeing the words getting and head in the same space over and over. And it was funny. It was
every time a boss would pop up in a Helltide, it would be like a headless husk. It was like, it was just, they were having fun.
They sure were. I did enjoy that. That's right.
As to the scope of the campaign, this was a longer seasonal campaign than we are used to. This was a full 9 chapters.
Was it really?
We've talked about this with previous days where it took us like 2 sessions.
Yeah, right. Maybe
season.
2, maybe 3. Yeah, this one was probably, well, I just thought the length was down to...
This was like 7.
See,
this was a lot more.
I felt like the length was not down to the number of things because I feel like 6 of those objectives were go get whispers.
So this is the thing. You'd have a couple little story beats, which would be go talk to this person, go fast travel over here, talk to the head, talk to the hand,
investigate
find a
thing, yeah.
And then it would kind of pad out in between the major story beats. You would have these other objectives. And it was always one, and it would get a little worse every time.
Every time.
It would tell you to go collect 10 grim favors, which that parlance, we're used to that phrase, grim favors.
Right.
That's the currency you get from completing whispers, which are usually what you do in Helltides, those little red icons on the map.
Yeah, they're like mini little objectives, little side quests that you do within the Helltide.
Yeah, and the Helltide's a colored patch of the map.
Yeah, and when you get enough, you turn them into the Tree of Whispers and you get a cache of rewards.
Of whatever you want.
And that's like normal, that function has been in the end game, I think, since the beginning.
It's a great loop.
Yeah, and so that's cool. The weird thing for me was that most of the season, you're just doing that.
So this is part of the conceit. And I agree that there is a frustration in the repetition gameplay-wise, but it is baked into the theme. Because if we're going to hunt down all of the heads that have disappeared, then go hunt for more heads is kind of the action of the season.
Sure, I mean, you're technically right. I just didn't find it particularly fun. And I'm realizing... When they first introduced the Helltide, I thought it was so cool and so fun. Now I don't really enjoy the Helltide because I think it's a little overstimulating. Like it's a lot. It's a lot of enemies. It's a lot of loot. It's a lot of different things going on that you can accomplish that they don't automatically start tracking when you engage with them. So it's confusing about what you're supposed to be doing at any given time. And you can't pause to check because you're getting attacked by enemies nonstop. And it's like so overwhelming that I get bored of the Helltide really fast. Like when I'm doing endgame Diablo stuff, I'm usually in dungeons because I find that way more fun and like a nice complete loop of gameplay. Like it's a satisfying amount of time to spend doing one thing and you feel accomplished at the end of it. Whereas the Helltide is just a little bit overwhelming for me.
I did the Nightmare Dungeon grind a couple of seasons ago with a NECRO, and I liked how predictable that was. Every time I run a dungeon, I know the difficulty of the dungeon is fighting the enemies. The boss is always going to be a pushover.
Yeah.
Do 46 of them? Okay, I'll throw on some podcasts and I can move through that.
I could do 45 dungeons, no problem. Yeah.
I get your complaint about Helltides, and I sympathize, but I do think they made an effort to improve things because these weren't technically Helltides. These patches of the maps that you travel to, and they give you a bunch of different objectives within a tiny radius to complete. They all had the new thematic villains with all the headless and the rotting.
Things.
And
you had to clear out the rot. Yeah.
Yes, they were called Headhunts.
Right.
And they would tell you all of the different objectives that were around you. And they improved this throughout the season with little quick patches.
Oh, okay.
They made the different objectives more visible, more legible, where there's a patrol where there's a big circle around someone and you have to kill a bunch of monsters within that radius close to the person.
Yeah, that was cool.
There are the ones where you have to talk to the magical ghostly frogs and they run away and you kill some people.
I liked the ones where you carry the animals to safety. You escort them to the tree and they get there safe and sound.
There were the ladies, the please help me ladies.
Oh, all of the all the peasants who need help. Yeah.
And
help, I beg you. That's what
help, I beg you.
Help, I beg you.
But it was so, you hear those voice lines. I mean, they could have recorded it a few different times. Just different intonation.
They only did, I think, 2 takes, and it's the same Irish woman every time.
And you grow dispassionate to it. But
you're like, help yourself, you stupid peasant.
Well, 10 hours in, we'd be running around looking for objectives in these headhunts, and I would say, Maggie, there's a please, I beg you up there.
Exactly,
It becomes silly, which I think it goes to that slightly goofy feel of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's what Diablo is supposed to be like, but so again, I didn't mind it.
There are quality of life features within this. Like, hey, you're going to go run the headhunt a lot. 10 grim favors? okay, most whispers you do give you 3 or 5, maybe.
Right. Sometimes 1, but usually 3 or 5.
In between all of these big chapters of the story, it's, hey, go get 20, 30, 40, 50,
60. And you're like,
Yeah.
can we not? Like, that's just, I'm sorry, it's too many. It's just too many. And it became not fun.
I don't agree, but I want to point out one more quality of life thing.
Okay.
Because we kept having to fast travel back to the Tree of Whispers every time we filled up with 10 Grim Favors to go turn it in and get a cache of stuff and go back to the Headhunt. But then we found, totally our mistake, that there was this cool little raven statue thing within the Headhunt
so
that
you didn't
acted,
have to go. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was like a satellite Tree of Whispers. Like, hey, you can turn in your stuff here. You don't
It's
need
a
to fast travel.
local option here. Yeah, I did like that.
But that saved you, 3 loading screens. That was great.
And I never liked having to leave the Helltide to go back to the Tree of Whispers, especially because usually after you get the certain number of Grim Favors is when you're supposed to then, talk to, I forget, the Galena or whatever that character's name is. They're always hanging out at the tree. So it felt awkward to it broke the immersion of I'm in the middle of getting these Grim Favors and you're waiting for me, but I'm not done yet. So I'll be back in 45 minutes. It was weird. So I'm glad that the Raven thing was there.
The season really did grind to a halt, especially as we got further on. When we had to get 40, 50, 60 of the Grim Favors, that became a bit of a slog. And I think that was maybe the lowest point of the season for me, was just, I get this. It's still fun. The gameplay's still fun, but it was just, I don't know. It was too much of a good thing.
It was. And I think it was also that the moments in between getting the Grim Favors throughout the seasonal campaign, hardly anything happened. So it was like 90% of the season was just getting the Grim Favors. And I was like, is this a season or is this just endgame with like a little bit of flavor on top? Because I'm going to be honest, the witch powers, I never noticed once. I noticed your frog because he was visually on screen.
He was huge.
But like, I never really knew what he was doing.
He was making me happy.
I spent all this time buying these different witch powers, activating them and upgrading them. I never felt or saw a tangible difference. That doesn't mean that a difference didn't occur, because of course it did, in terms of the stats and everything.
You weren't dying all the time. They must have been doing something.
But maybe that was because my build was so good. Had nothing to do with my witch powers.
Sure.
I used a build guide, spoiler. So
it snowballs.
I had a good build. So I didn't find the seasonal elements to be all that present. I was like, I'm just playing in the end game, but under a structure that I don't enjoy.
Yes, but also I think the seasonal campaigns are sort of end game with some flavor sprinkled on top.
They are, but I think it needs a little bit more flavor, or a little, or a slightly newer. But I just give me some variety. It didn't make you do a dungeon once. At no point did I go to a dungeon.
Yes, that's not true.
I don't remember.
There were 2 or 3 within the Headhunts.
Okay.
At various points where a dungeon would give you 5 Grim Favors. There were a couple dungeons we did do within the course of the grinding.
I guess I don't remember. That's so funny.
You were underwhelmed.
I guess so, yeah.
But as much as I could complain about that, the fact that I got 7 nights of playing this with you instead of 2, I'm not mad at that. And the underlying systems are in a great place. We talked about the state of the game, the quality of life features. It was fun. I guess on paper, they're just telling you go do stuff and grind longer. Mm-hmm. But on the ground, living through it, the experience is, okay, I'm going to have fun longer playing a game that's in a good spot that I enjoy.
I think I would be complaining less. If it was flipped and it was, every, 2% of the game is the campaign and then the other 98% is me doing dungeons, I probably wouldn't have a single complaint.
Yeah.
Because the problem is I don't like the Helltide. That's my problem. That's my own problem, is that I, maybe I'm just old. Genuinely, my eyes were burning and watering and hurting
Maggie cried through this
from playing overly stimulating, sensory overload.
Yes.
That is the Helltide. I was like, I can't look at this anymore. And it's not like I was playing for 10 hours straight.
Yeah.
The maximum I played in one sitting was maybe 3 hours. And I can sit and play Baldur's Gate for 7 hours in a row. That's not a problem for me, but it was just too much for my delicate eyes to handle.
It was a lot of the loot. It was a lot of explosions and flashes and all the things I enjoyed eventually had you tearing up.
I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much.
So let's move to the class update. And I'm glad you kind of previewed the big departure for you and I after so many episodes, like you said at the beginning, for talking about this game. we finally both used build guides.
We did.
And I'm going to talk about my class, but I'm more interested in yours first because you played 2 classes this season.
I did. So going in, I remember in our last Diablo episode, we were talking about like every time we get to the class updates, we talk about the classes and stuff. Oh no, we talked about this in our PoE episode recently. We were talking about the classes there and doing obvious comparisons to Diablo 4. And we kind of had a discussion. I was like, Cam, I think you need to give Barbarian another try because you tried it, the first time you played the campaign of D4 and you hated it. And I think it's time to go back. And I thought, you know what? Cam will do that. I'll do the same thing with NECRO. I tried NECRO once at the beginning of the campaign, hated it. I might have tried it at some other season. Now I can't quite remember, but I don't.
Yes, you did.
Did I?
You did,
okay.
a couple seasons ago.
Okay. And I was like, let's give it another shot. We'll like do our same classes from last time. It'll be a hoot.
It's romantic.
And I even used a build guide. You sent me this great one. It was a blood build. I love blood. Sounds great. Sounds like fun.
I love blood.
That's me. I love blood. And I was like, great, let's do it. And I was like moving at negative 10 miles an hour, couldn't get anything done. And I was dying every 2 seconds. I was just a squishy, slow slug. And to be fair.
And I was a poison dart frog.
Exactly. And to be fair, I didn't get very far with this thing. I got to maybe level 15.
It was about an hour.
Yeah. So maybe I should have given this thing a fairer shot, but I was like, I'm not having fun. I feel slow and stupid and I'm struggling in a way that's not enjoyable.
Slow and stupid wins the race.
Right. Which is exactly how I felt when we first started playing D4 in the campaign. And so I was like, okay, I gotta switch over. Like NECRO is not happening this time. Sorry about it. I thought about trying a new build and I thought, no, what I really wanted to play was Rogue. So I should just play Rogue. Like, why am I doing it for the symmetry of it all? I'm just going to play Rogue because it's what I want to play. And Rogue has been my favorite class of this game. And I've played it, I think, 2 other times. I was like, okay, let's do that. But what I did differently was this time I used a build guide. And normally, I've talked about this on the show before, I'm not a big fan of build guides because I enjoy the creativity that comes along with a game like Diablo 4 and Diablo 3, where you can mix and match and just kind of experiment with the skills that you enjoy and are having fun with and like play around. But I thought, you know what, Cam convinced me to do it. And I was like, sure, I'll just see like what this build guide has to offer.
Because you've already explored the class. You've played 2 different types of rogue already.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, I'll do something totally different. And so the build guide I went with was the Dance of Knives build. And this was cool because, I should say where it's from, I guess.
Icy Veins.
Thank you, from Icy Veins. And Dance of Knives is a new skill that was added to the rogue class with the Vessel of Hatred expansion, I believe.
Yes.
So I hadn't actually used this skill before. So I still got this new exciting thing. And I really, really liked it. I will say my favorite part of this season was playing this class in this build. It was really fun because the Dance of Knives, it's basically, I got it. The build guide worked great and I got it so that it's like I never ran out of resource to use this thing. And basically you kind of twirl around and spin around, it's, as it sounds, it's a dance of knives and you're just like taking people out. And it's really fun. And then you have this dash where you can move around and jump through enemies. And then you've got all this ranged skill as well, which is called, I think, barrage, which is like a bow and arrow thing. So it's really, really, really fast and dancey and like quick movement. I felt bad for you. I was probably moving the screen around so much.
You were very nimble. Yes.
And that was maybe not very fun for you. So it was sort of the complaint that we had about the Spiritborn class, which is where you move around too much. This was moving around just enough and under my own control. I never teleported without my consent. I always knew exactly where I was and where I needed to be and where I wanted to go. So I really enjoyed this build. And it was weird too because I didn't even use an ultimate skill. Like just that it didn't require one, this build that somebody put together. So that was a new thing for me. And I made a couple tiny alterations, but for the most part, I just followed it it like told me exactly like where to put your skills as you get them on your skill tree, like beat by beat. And so
witchcraft powers to use, the whole thing. Yeah.
So I just fully followed that. Although I did change your like rogue, your special rogue powers. The one it suggested I did not use because it was like one of those things that you don't notice and it's just in the background. I did the one where, I forget what it's called, but it's where you like fill up a little thing and then it gives you infinite mana for like 5 seconds or something. I really have enjoyed that in the past, so I activated that one instead.
So how did you find the class had changed since the last time you rolled a rogue?
Well, obviously the Dance of Knives skill was new, so that was a nice new thing for me. And otherwise, I didn't think I didn't notice any change, but that's good because last time I played rogue, it was a perfect class. And so it just continues to be good. I'm sure they've made updates that I don't know or recognize, but it's still a beautiful, fun class to play. I really enjoyed it. It was good.
Totally.
Yeah.
I am probably going to be a rogue next season.
I think you should. What did you play this season, Cam?
I followed through with your sentimental
You
little plan
did.
that
I'm
you
sorry.
immediately abandoned.
I wasn't having fun.
I made my long dreaded return to Barbarian.
Yes.
For the first time since the launch of Diablo IV, longtime listeners will remember my Barbarian Hank, who I struggled through the entire vanilla Diablo IV
His name was
campaign with.
Hank. And my NECRO was Skunk, I believe.
Yes, you tried to do Skank and they wouldn't let you.
It wouldn't let me because I guess it's a mean word.
So, Barbarian. I did not like the Diablo IV Barbarian because I thought it was nothing like the Diablo III Barbarian, which I loved. I played multiple Diablo III Barbarians into the dirt, grinding them far into Paragon. I can still picture them in my head. Like,
yes.
Their armor sets are iconic to me, and that is my first and favorite ARPG experience from back in the day.
And every time I think of barbarians in any sort of fantasy world, I think of you. And, like, because that's just like tied to you in my head.
Right. And I thought every bit of the Diablo IV Barbarian screwed up what I loved in the 3 Barbarian, where it wasn't this fun, rolling, rollicking, smashing power and shouting, and it felt balanced in Diablo 3, even though it felt like the strongest build after
totally
a certain point.
Yeah.
It never felt clumsy. It never felt cheap, and I didn't feel like I was just stomping through rooms of enemies.
Right.
It was still engaging.
You weren't overpowered.
While being powerful.
Yeah.
Right. Because it encouraged me to go to those higher difficulties, to do those, what were they called, Nephilim rifts?
Yeah,
all of those different like endgame sort of activities. And I just hated how weak and sluggish the Diablo IV Barbarian was. I felt like I never had enough of my resource. I never had buffs, and it was just waiting for cooldowns that barely made a difference. I hated the way that class was balanced at the beginning, and I was incredibly vocal about that because I felt like I'd lost something. So I then was petty and pouted and ignored the class for 7 seasons.
You sure did.
And here we are.
Even though I told you it had gotten better, because as y'all remember, one of my favorite characters in this game was a barbarian I played in like season 5-ish, one of those.
So I jumped back in. And I followed a build guide as well. I mean, I know the class well enough. There are a few surprises for me left in the world of Barbarian.
Sure.
But I basically took the build that was closest to where I was going anyway. Because my perpetual favorite type of Barbarian is the Hammer of the Ancients build, or Hota. I'll say Hammer of the Ancients, but
I'm going to say Hota.
Just know that in my head I'm saying Hota.
You're going to say BARB.
It was everything I wanted.
Yeah.
This was the Diablo III Barbarian come to life again.
Awesome.
I had maximum smash power, where I would build up my resource and then wham!
Yeah.
Big hammer, killing everything on the screen.
You were annihilating. It was great.
All of my other skills were shouts. To buff me, to make me move faster, to make a bunch of ghosts charge with me into battle.
I liked those ghosts. Those were cool.
The resource generation, I had a wonderful time. And after a few levels, I really felt powerful. It was shaky for a second, and then I really felt the power creep start. And because everything's been balanced better and all those changes under the hood, all the systems of the game have been so drastically improved over the course of the last 7 seasons, I didn't feel endlessly stuck in the cooldown time loop that I resented through the entire base campaign.
Good.
And then right towards the end of us getting that last set of 60 grim favors and grinding those Headhunt Helltide things, I hit Paragon. So I got through the main 60 levels, and then I moved into Paragon. And obviously it takes longer to get from 59 to 60 than it does from like Paragon 1 to 2. It's kind of like resetting.
Sure.
So you're blowing through early Paragon points. I'm chugging elixirs. I'm doing high-level content. I'm on a harder difficulty. So I am blasting through Paragon levels. And in that, my power spiked.
Yeah.
By the time we finished playing this season, my Hammer of the Ancients, which is the only thing that matters for my build, was one-shotting bosses and treasure goblins.
Yeah.
It's always a mad dash with you and I because the camera kind of pulls when one of us moves.
Right.
When a goblin shows up, one of us screams Gobby.
Treasure goblin.
No, we say Gobby.
Yes, we say Gobby. It's much easier to say.
Someone yells Gobby, and then both our characters like jump on horseback and chase after the thing, hop off and just try to hit it as many times. And usually we're pretty efficient at that.
Yeah, we're good at it now.
But it was cold.
I know, it was just like, boom, done.
It was like, oh, there's a goblin near me, bam, dead.
Yeah,
like,
usually it takes a while to kill it, but not anymore.
The feeling of one-shotting a treasure goblin, it was so satisfying.
It's pretty great.
That level of Barbarian, when you're in Paragon, I had all the movement speed I wanted. I was getting legendaries with like 20% movement speed buffs. I got a unique... I've got like 52 axes and swords equipped, and one of them drops. It gives me 200% damage to close enemies. I had
amazing.
movement speed. I had cranked up damage. I had mobility skills. I was a menace.
You
The
really
Barbarian is back.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy you finally did it. And I'm glad that you waited until it was back to how you like it. I wonder if... Do you remember when you first played it for D4? Was it a similar kind of build? I know you didn't use a build guide.
Yes, of course.
But, so they've just totally reworked everything.
Well, there's also... and you can do a whirlwind build. I'm sure I desperately tried that at the time.
I'm pretty sure you tried all kinds of things because you're like, this class is not working for me. I think you respect like 10 times.
And it's funny because you do get personally invested in these things, especially with long-running franchises. So in the same way I felt, in a petty and emotional way, betrayed because they took my Barbarian away from me.
Right.
I now feel wonderful and grateful because they gave it back. I had a great time with
I'm
Barb.
so glad you did, and I have a feeling you're gonna like continue playing into the end game with this one for a while.
And yes, the Headhunts are a grind.
Yeah.
There are, when you're chugging along for Grim Favors, there's a part of that stops being actively fun.
Sure.
But when the class is that much fun, you don't care.
Right. That can make it okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like my most fun thing about this season was how fun the class was to play. So.
And of course, that they still enable couch co-op.
Yes, my God. If they ever get rid of that, I'm rioting.
Yeah.
I
playing
can't.
this with you is half the fun.
I mean, I like playing Diablo alone, but I way prefer playing it with you.
Of course.
It's way more fun. And because we can like make jokes at each other, we can make fun of the things, and we can,
the headless, and how can you be deadly headless?
Yeah.
We're doing all the Harry Potter quotes.
Yeah, right. It's a fun
was a
time
lot of fun.
shouting Gobby like a fool. Yeah.
Like a fiend.
Yeah, right.
So as ever, we're going to wrap up with a couple wrap-up questions.
Cool.
Maggie doesn't know these, so I'm just going to rapid fire these at you so we can get out of here.
Great.
Do you think, after discussing it, after experiencing the whole season, that grind for the Headhunts that we keep talking about, is that a cheap nuisance to pad out game time, or is that an essential part of extending the season so that people don't play 2 days every 3 months?
I think doing recycling an existing system and like mechanic is totally necessary. I just think you gotta spice it up a little bit, or change it up, or give me some variety. Because I think I was thinking as you were talking about, I just tapped into Paragon as I finished the season. I think that sort of timeline and like ratio makes perfect sense. I feel like you should be like pretty much like at level 60 when you finish the season. That makes more sense. We've had other seasons where we're done at like level 32, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. So I agree, and like seasons come out quickly, and you need time for game developers to create the seasons, and so I think that's true. You just gotta give it a little more variety or some other kind of flavor on top of there to make it not feel like a little bit of a waste.
I agree. I think the action of a season is directing content. It's telling you what to go do and giving it a slightly different, Mario, Luigi paint job of, hey, dungeons are a little different now and there are witches in them. So go do 50 dungeons, shut up, buy something in the cash shop and go away for a few months.
Yeah, right.
And I get that. But I agree with you. I think there are more types of activities in this game at this point that they could have directed us towards that I would have had a great time with.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot going on in the game that the season did not encourage me to engage in. I thought that was strange.
I'm fine with grinding, but when you develop so many good avenues of endgame or repeatable content, then direct me to do more than one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that was what hit for me. I would love like a season of dungeons.
Yes,
where
I agree.
They really just spiced up dungeons. Like, this one's full of treasure goblins. This one's really hard. This one's green. Like,
they tried to do that with the season of the Construct, but it was like there are really annoying traps in the dungeons, and there's a robot following you.
Seneschal robot.
Yeah, like that's what they tried to do. But I mean, you're right. They could do that. I agree. Like, this is full of treasure goblins. This is full of. They could do an all-stars one. Have a vampire one, right? Yeah. Have a witches one. I don't know. You could have fun there.
Lilith is at the end of this dungeon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Make it like
she keeps dying and not dying, so whatever.
Season of the Butcher. I don't know. Just like dig into the things that we love so far in the game and really expand on them, cut them up into little pieces, and scatter them across the game.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good time. Maybe they'd do something like that for like an anniversary season. I don't know. Something that comes out in June. I don't know. That could be interesting.
The last question here is sort of expanding on what we're talking about. This cycle we've gotten into, this structure, we've done 7 of these episodes, we've played many dozens of this hours to get this far. Is this enough? This seasonal structure. Hey, we're going to give you a new freaky aesthetic every few months. We're going to tweak some activities. There's a carrot on a stick. There's a seasonal vendor that you can rank up with, and you can get new caches, new materials, new loot. And then you come back in a few months after you're sick of it, and hey, it's all refreshed and you do it again. Are you still enjoying it? Are you getting sick of it? Like when you look forward to, hey, season 8's going to start in April. Are you looking forward to that? Are you looking forward to season 12?
Right. At this point, I'm getting a little sick of it. I think especially, you know what? I think if Vessel of Hatred had been better, I would feel better about the game as a whole and be more excited about a potential, another expansion coming in the next couple of years. So like I would have that carrot, as I play these other seasons, and I would feel less bad about, oh, well, the seasons are they're not super robust, but like expansions come every couple of years and those are really fun and worth the wait. So I don't mind the in between. But because Vessel of Hatred was, I think, pretty disappointing, I am not feeling confident about any other expansions they might do in the future. Do you know if they are going to? I can't remember what the
more
situation.
Expansions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So like I feel nervous about that. I mean, again, I'm not asking for an expansion, like a season that's an expansion's worth, like I obviously don't think that that's warranted. I just, overall the structure is fine, but I'm getting just a little bored of it, especially because the last 2 seasons I've been disappointed in. So it's like, it feels like the good ones they're more of an anomaly and less the regular,
Yeah, the last one I almost give a pass to because it was so overshadowed by the expansion.
Yeah.
It happened to not be the best season.
And I think we said that in our episode. Like, of course it wasn't as good. There was a whole expansion coming out. You had to prioritize that. But
I asked you that question in that way because this is your first live game.
That's true. I've never done this with any other game.
Right. So I'm used to the ups and downs.
The first time you told me about seasons, I was like, I don't know. I don't understand.
Why do I have to make a new character?
The game's already there. What do you mean? Like, I had no idea. Yeah. So this is all new to me. Yeah.
I just want to sort of check in about the longevity of this because for me, the fact that the seasons are free is gigantic.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to pay for seasons, I would have a totally different opinion about all of this. I would be like, fuming, and I would have stopped paying for seasons like 4 seasons ago.
But the new aesthetics and the constant under the hood improvements of the basic systems underlying the game, and the fact that I can play with you for a few days to a week to as much as I want to grind every few months, I'm not mad about it.
Sure. And I also like that the season, like the structure of the season, like being, starting on a certain day, ending on a certain day, having a campaign, it gives you more of an incentive to test out all of the updates and improvements they're constantly making to the game. Like I remember Season of Loot Reborn, it was like, they revamped how you do loot. And like I remember that much more and appreciated it much more than if I had just like randomly picked up Endgame, but like, the inventory looks different, or like when they revamped the leveling with last season and with Vessel of Hatred, I may not have like really paid much attention to that. So I like that it keeps me up to date on things more. It makes me feel more involved. And like I say, I'm getting tired of it. I'm going to play season 8. Like I'm not going to not play the next season. Like not even for the purposes of the show. Like I just enjoy it. So yeah, like it's getting a little tiresome, but I'm,
at this
all right.
point, this game is a part of our life. Mm-hmm. It is an ongoing feature of not just this show, but also the activities we do together.
Right.
And I feel incredibly grateful that the game has been kept so alive, that it is so constantly iterated upon and improved and tweaked and experimented with. And it's been as much fun to follow as it is to play, but it's really fun to play lately.
Sure.
So I feel great about this season, and I was expecting to not enjoy this season and feel bad about the seasonal model, and instead I've totally flipped to the other direction on both of those things.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, and even with all this said, I am going to keep playing my rogue because it's really, really fun. I'm not going to enter a Helltide for the next 6 months because I'm so tired of
Maybe do
them.
the Nightmare Dungeon.
That's what I'll do.
Grind that up.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not touching the Helltide unless I absolutely have to because it's a sensory nightmare. So dungeons, it is nice and dark in there. It's much better.
As a brief aside, I've also been going back to some of my old seasonal characters that are now in the Eternal realm because their seasons have ended.
Mm-hmm.
And those were all tweaked because remember when you used to be able to level to 100? And
yeah, so now it's all confusing. Yeah.
so now they've been bumped down to level 50.
50.
And
Mhm.
all of their loot is kind of retired.
Yes.
Like it's there, but it's marked as like, this is shit now, go get more stuff.
Yeah.
So I have to level those characters from 50 to 60 and kind of update their loot. But the fun part in going back through that is that I get to revisit some of these classes. I went back to my sorcerer named Margaret, who I started pretty early on, and I had a fun time just, trolling through the world, doing some fun activities, running through a bit of Vessel of Hatred. The game's in a great place right now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah,
I feel good about it.
I do
Season
feel good.
of Witchcraft.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I would have liked a little bit more Witchcraft in there, but
Down in the comments
it's all right.
below or in email form. A lot of people seem to prefer that. secondbreakfastpod@gmail.com. Let us know what class you played for Season 7.
Yes.
Let us know if you did jump like I did headfirst into Path of Exile 2, what you thought about Diablo 4 in the coming back to it.
Yeah, for sure. Also, let us know what you think of Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space, which is available for purchase via the link in the description of this episode. It is a light sci-fi dark comedy rip-roaring ride through space. It is Ridley Scott's Alien meets Monty Python. It is a hoot. It is fun. It is dark. It is special. And you can read it as a paperback novel or as an ebook, or you can listen to the fully produced audio drama, which is, I think, the best way to consume it. That's available on pretty much any audiobook listening platform of your choice. Link is down below. Thank you all so much for your support of Cam.
We also have bonus episodes on Patreon. We have a ton of game coverage in our back catalog, some of which is exclusive over on Patreon. We also, you're here for Diablo. You like fantasy as much as you like horror. Those are sort of the two halves of our heart and brain at this point in the show. We have tons of horror episodes. This past Tuesday, we did a real freaky horror movie that we talked about called Red Rooms. Go check that out if you have the stomach for it. We cover horror all the time. We did 2 episodes on Nosferatu. In terms of fantasy, we do Game of Thrones chapter by chapter every single Friday. We talked about the new Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim anime just a few weeks ago in January,
Yes,
I think
January.
early January. And we do as much fantasy as we can in the ancillary spaces beyond the Game of Thrones weekly episodes. So
Absolutely.
we've got a lot popping off, and we will be back, of course, with Season 8 in April.
Of course we will.
Or maybe May, depending on how long these seasons are getting now.
That's true,
But
yeah.
as ever, thank you for listening, and we'll be back here on Friday with another brand new episode.